Hello dear students, welcome to the lecture series on the subject Botany. Today our topic is Taxonomy and Diversity of Malvaceae. Dear students, we all know about the lady's finger that we eat as a vegetable. Our children, they are fond of chocolates. We plant the ornamentals like hollyhock, China rose in our gardens. And lastly, we wear the cotton fabrics during the summer season. Do you know all these plants, whether lady's finger, China rose, chocolate or the cotton, they all belong to a single botanical family called as Malvaceae. So let us today discuss this family Malvaceae. In this lecture, these aspects of the family Malvaceae will be discussed. Number 1, taxonomy. Number 2, systematic position. Number 3, phylogeny. 4th, diversity. And 5th and the last, economic importance. So starting with taxonomy. The Malvaceae is commonly known as Mallow family. The family name Malvaceae is based on the scientific name of the type genus Malva. Malvaceae as a family, as a formal taxonomic category, was established first of all by a French botanist de Giessu. The common name, that is the Mallow family, is basically derived from a term mallow, which was first given by Botany, and it means soft. The family members, they are unique in having herbaceous or shrubby or tree habit. They are often with satellite trichomes. They are typically having an apicalyx. The calyx is present and is characteristically valvate. The corolla is often convolute. The stamens are connate as a tube. This tube may form 5 or many bundles with monothecal or dithecal anthers. The gynoecium is here syncarpous and the ovary is superior. Placentation is commonly axile or rarely it can be marginal. And lastly, the fruit is here a capsule. After discussing these unique features of Malvaceae, now let us discuss the taxonomy in detail. Starting from its habit. The members of the family Malvaceae, they can be either annual or perennial herbs. The examples are abutilon, Elsea, and other types of herbaceous species. They can be also even shrubs. The common example is hibiscus, or they can be even trees. The example here is Tilia. Now the root. As Malvaceae belongs to dicots, that's why here we have a typically taproot system. The stem in the case of Malvaceae is often associated with mucilage canals. Also, the stem has either satellite trichomes, satellite means the star-shaped hairs, or peltate scales. Leaves. The leaves are usually alternately arranged. They can form a spiral or commonly what we call as two-ranked. The leaves are stipulate and the stipules are often caducous. The leaf blade here is simple, but sometimes this leaf blade can be permanently lobed to divided. We see this leaf blade as divided in the case of Gossypium, or very rarely the leaf can be palmately compound. The leaf margins in the case of Malvaceae leaf, they are either entire or they can be serrate. The teeth here, they are of a characteristic type called as malvoid. What is this malvoid type? It is the major veins are unexpanded and they end at the tooth apex. The venation in the leaves in case of Malvaceae is palmate. Now, the plural morphology of the plant, starting with inflorescence. The inflorescence is here a raceme, or rarely we see also cymose. The example is Peonia. Sometimes this inflorescence is characteristically reduced into a solitary flower that is axillary with a determinate basic repeating unit which bears 3 brackets. Out of these 3 brackets, one is always sterile while the other 2 they are subtended by lateral cymes. Or sometimes we also see the inflorescence is represented by a single solitary flower. Now the flower is bracteate, most often bracteate. The common example is abutilon, or sometimes it can be abracteate. The example is hibiscus. The flowers are bisexual, but rarely there are occurrences of unisexual flowers also in Malvaceae. The flowers are also actinomorphic. They are hypogynous, and very rarely there are some taxa where the flowers are perigynous. The flowers are often associated, a characteristic feature in the case of Malvaceae is the flowers are associated with a conspicuous bracket that forms an epicalyx. The number of these brackets which form the epicalyx, it varies between different species. For example, in the case of Malva, the number of brackets that form the epicalyx is 3. It can range from 5 to 8 in the case of Althea, or sometimes even this epicalyx can be absent, as we see in the case of Sida. Now, the flower, individual parts of the flower starting from calyx. The calyx here comprises of sepals, which are usually 5 in number, but rarely they can be 3 or 4 also. These sepals, they are that's why we call it as aposepalous, or they can be basally fused, what we call as basally synsepalous, and their astuation is velvate. The nectaries in the case of Malvaceae, they are present at calyx. These nectaries consist of densely packed multicellular glandular hairs that are present at the adaxial base of the calyx. Now the second part of the flower, that is corolla, which is always an attractive part of the flower. It comprises of the usual petals, which number about 5, but rarely we see also these petals, they comprise of 3 or 4 petals only. These petals, they are adnate, that means they are fused to the base of an androecium tube. They are free, that's why we call these corolla as apopetalous. The astuation is imbricate, or sometimes convolute or velvate. Male part of the flower, that is androecium. The androecium comprises of stamens, which are 5, or they can be of indefinite number. They are epipetalous, or sometimes they are borne on a short to elongate structure called as androgynophore. The filaments of the stamens, they are usually fused together. This fusion can be either as a tube. This tube surrounds the gynoecium. This characteristic feature is called as monoadelphous, which is unique to the Malvaceae family. or these filaments, they can form 5 to 15 bundles of stamens, and they assume a shape of fascicle, or sometimes they can form a tube which in turn bears bundles. The stem nodes are sometimes present in the flower, and they are elongate and they alternate with the stamens or groups of stamens. The anther is bilocular, or it may appear as unilocular. How it appears as unilocular? Because during the development of the anther, there is some modification in this bilocular anther, and it appears as half anther. That's why the overall anther appears as unilocular. The anthers, they are bisporangiate, they are introse, and the dehiscence is either longitudinal or it can be poricidal. The pollen grains are large and they are with spines. That's why we call them as spinulose. These pollen grains are tricolporate, triporate, to sometimes they can be multiporate. Now the female part of the flower, that is called as gynoecium. The gynoecium comprises of carpels. The carpels are 2 to many in number. They are fused. That's why we call this gynoecium as syncarpus. The ovary is superior, multilocular. That means locules are as many as there are the carpels. The ovules are either solitary or they can be numerous in each of these locules. The ovule is anatropous, or sometimes it can be campylotropous. It is bitegemic, crassulaceolate. The placentation is characteristically axile, but sometimes in some plant species of Malvaceae, we see it as marginal. The style is unilobed, lobed, or it can be branched at its apex. The stigma is capitate in shape, or sometimes it can be lobed. Now the fruit. Fruit in the case of Malvaceae, it can be a loculicidal capsule. That's the common type of fruit in Malvaceae, or it can be a schizocarp of mericarps. The example is malva. Or it can be an indehiscent pod, what we see in Adansonia. Or the fruit can be follicle even. The common example is citriculia, or nut, what we see in this genus Tilia. Or very rarely the fruit can be a berry. The example is Malva viscus. The seeds within the fruit, they are either single or they can be many. Sometimes these seeds are with hairs or they can be arillate. They are occasionally winged, and the embryo within the seeds, that is characteristically curved. Endosperm is present here, but it is formed of either oily or starchy. Now the pollination system in the family Malvaceae. The flowers of Malvaceae, they are diverse. That's why they attract bees, wasps, ants, flies, moths, birds and bats. These different organisms, they act as pollinators in the case of Malvaceae. Mainly, the nectar is the reward for the pollinator. This nectar is usually produced on the inner surface of the fused sepals. Most of the species in the case of Malvaceae, they are outcrossing. Now, fruit dispersal. The fruit dispersal is extremely varied in Malvaceae. The capsular fruited species, they have small seeds. That's why they are either pollinated by wind or by water. These capsular fruit species, they possess specialized dispersal structures such as wings or hairs. Many species in the Malvaceae, they are having a follicle fruit. As already mentioned, the common example is sterculia. In such cases, the seeds, they contrast in color with the follicle wall. That's why it leads to their dispersal by birds. However, there is a genus by the name of Firminia, where the fruit is follicle, but the follicle opens very early in the development and it forms a dry wing-like structure for wind dispersal. Those species in Malvaceae where we have schizocarp of mericarpus, they are self-dispersed, or they can have adaptation for external dispersal on birds or mammals. The large indehiscent pods, the common example I already mentioned is the Adansonia. These pods, they contain an edible, somewhat sour and dry and fleshy seeds. That's why they are dispersed by large mammals. The nuts, what we see in Tilia, they are borne on a cyme, a type of inflorescence that is usually fused to a conspicuous wing-like bracket, and the entire infractans and the associated brackets, they are entirely dispersed by wind. Those fruits which are fleshy or having an arillate structure, they are usually dispersed by either mammals or birds. Now, talking about the systematic position of Malvaceae. Different systematicists, they have classified Malvaceae under different classification schemes. In this lecture, we will discuss only the prominent classification systems, starting with Bentham and Hooker's system of classification. Bentham and Hooker, they classified Malvaceae under the class Dicotyledons, subclass Polypetalae, series Thalamiflorae, and the order Malvaceae. Later on, an American taxonomist, Cronquist, he classified Malvaceae under the division. He called this division as Magnoliophyta and the class Magnoliopsida. Subclass, he recognized a subclass by the name Dilenidae, and order again, just like Bentham Hooker, Malvaceae. Takhtajan, a famous Russian taxonomist who based an evolutionary system of classification, he classified Malvaceae under the division, again just like Cronquist, Magnoliophyta, class Magnoliopsida, subclass Dilenidae, but he incorporated one superorder by the name Malvaceae, and order again repeating the Malvaceae. Dahlgren, a famous Danish botanist who gave a system of classification, he classified Malvaceae under the class Magnoliopsida, subclass Magnolidae, superorder Malvini, and the order Malvaceae. Robert Thorne, he classified it under the class Angiospermae. That means he didn't recognize the class Magnoliopsida. He classified it under the class Angiospermae, subclass Rosidae, superorder Malvini, and the order Malvaceae. Angiosperm phylogeny group, a collaborative group of taxonomists who have proposed a rankless system of classification. They recognize basically the monophyletic clades. They have recognized Malvaceae under the clade Eudicots and the subclade Eurosides II, and order again here the Malvaceae. Now let us discuss the phylogeny of Malvaceae. Previously, from very earlier times, and still quite common nowadays even, the Malvaceae was divided into 4 families. The 4 different families were, first of all, the Malvaceae, but in a strict sense, what we in taxonomy we call it as sensu stricto. Number second family was Bombycaceae, commonly known as Bombyx family. Third family was Citriculaceae, commonly known as chocolate family, and the fourth one was Tiliaceae, commonly known as linden families. However, very recently, both based on morphological and molecular evidences, it has been suggested that these traditional distinctions, as I already mentioned, 4 different families, that these 4 different families, their distinction is arbitrary and it is not stable, it is inconsistent. That is why these 4 families have been put together in a single family, which is a monophyletic family called as Malvaceae. but not the Malvaceae sensolato, but the Malvaceae sensostricto in the broader circumscription. The family as a whole, that means the Malvaceae sensolato, may be united by these common features called as apomorphies. These common features can be number 1, valvate calyx, satellite trichomes, and the nectaries, they are composed of glandular hairs, and also the veneation is here characteristically palmate. And also one more character which is an apomorphy within this Malvaceae is that the secondary tissue rays, they are dilated in shape. The phylogenetic relationships within the family have been investigated by cladistic analysis based on both morphological and DNA based characters. At present, as of now, 9 monophyletic subfamilies have been recognized under the family Malvaceae. These are Gravoideae, Betyrinoideae, Helicteroideae, Brownlowoideae, Sterculoideae, Dombioideae, Ptilioideae, Bombicoideae, and last one Malvoideae. The Gravoideae, which is represented by genera like Grevia, Corchoris, Triumpita, and other relatives. These Gravoideae, they have lost calyx fusion, and the outer stamens, they are sterile here, and the petal epidermis is very distinctive. Number 2nd subfamily is Betyniroideae, which is represented by genera like common genera like Theobroma, Betyneria, and their relatives. The Betyniroideae, they have 5 elongated staminodes that alter with unusually shaped petals. Often these petals, they are clawed and they are basally hooded. The Helicteroideae subfamily, as represented by Helicteris, Durio, and other relatives, they show a common feature of presence of androgynophore. One more subfamily by the name Brownloideae, it is represented by genera like Bria, Brownlovia, and their relatives. The Brownloideae have their calyx strongly fused, and this calyx is bell-shaped. Also here, the anthers are basally dilated with apically contiguous anther sacs. One more subfamily, Sterculoideae, which contains common genera Sterculia, Cola, Firmania, and their relatives. They possess a distinctive unisexual apetalous flower, which is having an elongate gynophore, and the carpels are here separate at maturity, and they form a cluster of follicles. The Dombioideae subfamily, containing genera like Dombia, Pterospermum, and relatives, is distinct in having spiny pollens, and also they have elongate stem nodes that alternate with petals. The Ptilioideae subfamily, represented by genera like Tilia, Craigia, they are distinct in possessing folded cotyledons. Stem nodes here are opposite to the petals. The remaining 2 subfamilies, one Bombicoideae and the Malvoideae. Traditionally, they were recognized under separate families, Bombicoaceae and Malvaceae, as already mentioned at the start of discussing the phylogeny. They are closely related to each other. Reason being, they have transversely septate bilocular anthers that are strongly connate, and during the course of development, they become modified to appear as unilocular. Starting with the Bombicoideae, which is represented by common genera like Bombax, Adansonia, Seba, etc. They may be monophyletic because of having palmately compound leaves and also having platinate, triangular, and non-spiny pollen grains. The monophyly of Malvoideae, the largest of all the subfamilies, this Malvoideae, it is supported by having globose spiny pollen, a staminal tube with 5 apical teeth, and also have a well-developed apicalyx. Also, the chloroplast DNA restricted site data also support its monophyly. Within this Malvoideae, as I mentioned, this is the largest subfamily within the family Malvaceae. The genera with loculicidal capsules and numerous seeds. Example is hibiscus and the gossypium. They form a basal but paraphyletic complex. Another subclade within this Malvoideae is represented by genera such as Malva, Sida, Abutilon. They have schizocarpic fruits, and they have only 1 or 2 ovules per carpel, and also they have lost the apical teeth on the staminal tube. Now let us discuss the diversity in the family Malvaceae. At present, the family is represented world over by about 250 genera, with having more than 4,200 species. Some of the species-rich genera in this family are Hibiscus, having 300 species. Then Citriculia and Dumbia, each having 250 species. Sida and Pavonia, having 200 species each. Grevia with 150 species, followed by Cola, having 125 species. Then Abutilon and Trimpeta, each having 100 species. Then Bombax, common Bombax, having 60 species. And lastly, the Tilia, having 45 species. Members of this family Malvaceae, they are distributed mostly in tropical and temperate climates, but mainly they are concentrated. Their concentration is more in terms of their distribution in the South American tropics. Now let us discuss the economic importance of Malvaceae. The members of Malvaceae family, they are of immense economic importance. Some of the uses that Malvaceae species are put to can be summarized as under. The family contains many species that are grown as ornamentals, namely China rose. Its scientific name is Hibiscus rosa sinensis, or the rose of Sharon. Its scientific name is Hibiscus syriacus, or the common hollyhock, scientific name Althea rosea, or a tree that we cultivate in our parks by the name of linden tree. Its scientific name is Tilia. Or we have trees like Chinese parasol tree, scientific name is Firmania. Or one more species of Malvaceae which is used as ornamental is Turk's cap, scientific name Malvaceae. Or lastly, the Portia tree, scientific name Thespecia. In addition to their ornamental use, the Malvaceae species, they are used for other economic purposes. For instance, the young fruits of okra, scientific name Hibiscus esculentus, and durian, the scientific name Durio zebethens, they are used as vegetables. Or the industrial importance of the family Malvaceae is the product cocoa, the source of chocolate. It is obtained from the seeds of a species by the name of Theobroma cacao. The seeds of one more species, Cola nitida, they yield an important commercial product called cola. Or the fiber plants, for example, the best fiber is obtained from the species of Corchoris, the common jute. Or we have the hairs that are associated with the seeds. They are used as stuffing material, such as capote from the species of Seba and Bombax. Or the most common and highly important cotton that is used in the fabric industry is obtained from the different species of Gossypium. The Gossypium is a common genera in the family Malvaceae. The Gossypium is in fact the world's most important fiber plant. Some species of Malvaceae, they yield valuable timber. The common examples are balsa wood, scientific name Ochroma paradimale. The basswood, scientific name Tilia cordata. The timber is used in making furniture and also in making musical instruments. Dear students, with this we come to the end of today's lecture. Hope you have enjoyed the lecture on the topic Taxonomy and Diversity of Malvaceae. See you again with some another topic. Till then, bye bye.